I'm not really sure how I feel about Ravnica Remastered. Let's talk about it. Alright guys, thanks for being here. A little bit of a different video today in terms of how I usually format like set preview reveals and stuff, but I don't know how I feel about this one, and I kind of want to just dive into it with some more candid, less scripted thoughts. But if you guys do enjoy the content, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and then go ahead and click the bell icon if you want to stay notified for all up-to-date stuff. But yes, Ravnica Remastered releases in early January. I believe it's January 12th. And it is a reprint set along the lines of Dominaria Remastered and Time Spiral Remastered before that. And we knew about the set's existence for a while, specifically the inclusion of the 10 shocklands. Now, the shocklands are definitely the biggest selling point for the set, coming in both retro frame, standard, and borderless style treatments. There's going to be a lot of different sheets with shocklands on them, and hopefully it will make all of the shocks affordable, at least for a while, just because of the mass amount that will be flooding the market. So from that perspective, and with the shocks being 10 cards that kind of carry the set, it's definitely intriguing, and I can see where people would probably be excited to kind of go after some of that. But beyond that, I felt like they really needed a bit more of a home run in terms of getting people drawn into the product. Now, they did announce that there would be anime-style cards similar to Wilds of Eldraine and a few other sets prior. There are going to be 30 of them in total, and while I will show a couple off here in the video, I am planning on making a separate video talking about the anime subset and the reprints and sort of all of that, so a little bit later this week. So I won't dive too much into that in terms of the content of today's video. But what's got me a little bit kind of concerned is, like, I'm not really sure where the value is going to be in this set. Obviously, the shocklands are going to command some value, and we did learn that there are serialized versions of the shocklands and a bunch of other retro frame cards as well. I'm actually a big fan of this move. I like serialized stuff for multiple reasons, but I think it also, appeals to collectors, which causes more product to be opened, which means the market becomes more accessible to get your hands on singles, which is obviously a good thing for the player base. So I am very much pro serialized cards. A lot of other sports cards, other games do things of that nature. I know some people don't like it, but I'm a big fan myself. Now, this, much like Dominaria Remastered, will also have, retro frame slot in the set, and you can pull pretty much anything in retro frame from what I've seen, which is pretty cool because, like I said, it means you will have a large variety of shocklands and ways to pull them, and I do think that's going to sort of be the main thing for people, in the set. If you play Pioneer, where you play a lot of shocks at 4, or even if you like to build multiple commander decks, like, people are definitely going to be wanting to pick up sets of these cards, and there are some options for everybody. But aside from the shocklands, let's talk a little bit about what else is going to be in here from a reprint perspective, and honestly, there's not as many things as I'd hoped. So one of the bigger reprints is Bruvac the Grandiloquent, which is actually a card from Jumpstart as well as from the list. And I don't know that it's been printed anywhere else prior, but I'm guessing there's some story where he's on Ravnica or tied into Ravnica in some way. So it's not a bad reprint from that perspective, and it's about $35 prior to this reprint announcement. So this is a good card, and obviously he does have, a couple different variants, versions, whatever. It's not bad. It's definitely something that will at least hopefully drive his price down a bit, and it's a popular card in certain mill strategies, so people will most likely want to get their hands on that. But, he alone is not going to carry, the set. Another big reprint that we're seeing in this set, of course, is, well, I say big, but Gideon Blackblade, which is the version of Gideon that can turn itself into an indestructible creature that is still a planeswalker and can't take damage. A pretty cool card for sure, but it was only about like $3 or $4, so it's not exactly, again, breaking anyone's bank. It's, when thinking about what goes into a reprint set like this, you look at sets like Dominaria Remastered and how they had Vampiric Tutor and Force of Will and Enlightened Tutor and even Sylvan Library. I mean, there were a lot of big reprints in there that were higher value, and so while the shocks definitely do make up a good bit of value for the set, they're not anywhere near the price range of some of those other top level cards, and I think that's going to be one of those things that really, it factors into the pricing as we go forward. Liliana Dreadhorde General is another card in here that's a decent reprint for sure. This was almost $20 out of War of the Spark, so it's actually a good and welcomed reprint considering its price point before. But I don't even think Liliana has any alternate treatments or anything, which feels like kind of a missed opportunity given, the popularity of Liliana as a card and it being useful and whatnot in terms of, appealing to the sort of higher end stuff. Lord of the Void is another one, pretty good, especially in Commander. Was only printed in Gatecrash, so it doesn't have any other prints, and it was about $15 before this. He does have an incredibly cool alternate artwork in the set, and that's definitely nice. Again, a good reprint, but the only reason this card was expensive, I think, is because of the fact that it only had one print. So now, as we look at, reprints going forward, I don't necessarily see it maintaining value or being something that really kind of holds on to that in any way. Just kind of continuing to look around at a few other things. I mean, you've got cards like Arclight Phoenix, which was a couple dollars out of Guilds of Ravnica. Definitely a really good card that sees a lot of competitive play in certain formats, but not exactly hard carrying anything. And while it does have a cool alternate art that may end up commanding some value just because, of the card's playability, it's, again, not really much of a selling point. Hellkite Tyrant is an extremely good reprint that absolutely got a gorgeous alternate artwork too, so there is that, which is really, really cool from, for a card like this that's just as powerful, as impactful as it is. Every time it's gotten reprinted, it's gone back up in price, so it's $10, but I do think, the borderless will carry a good bit of value, at least I hope, because it's a cool card, and I think, people are going to want to be chasing that higher level artwork. But if you see the points I'm making so far, I'm essentially looking at, we're looking at a bunch of, $10 cards and a couple $20, $25 cards, maybe, that are not really, in demand on the level of, the tutors and stuff. They're more so just cards that are pricey because they see use in certain things and they're hard to get. And that doesn't bode well, I think, for the future of the product. At least not on the surface. Again, I think a lot of the value from this set will come from the shocklands, and I also think what we're going to see is, the specialty versions of those shocklands and whatnot being what drives people. Birds of Paradise getting another reprint in here just a year after Dominaria Remastered. Obviously a good card. It does have its own alternate artwork, which is cool. Birds of Paradise is always going to be a card that's in demand, but it's going to have a ceiling, right? It's going to, probably be like a $4 or $5 card and then go back up to 10. I don't think it's going to do anything, crazy game changing in terms of really driving people's interest. And I think that's kind of the biggest problem that I have going through this full set, and just looking at different pricing and even other cards like Master of Cruelties, which is obviously really good in Commander in certain strategies and can do all kinds of crazy things. It's like a $5 card. It's not commanding crazy value. And Nikol Bolas, also another card that was in War of the Spark, is, I don't know, $5 to $8 prior to this reprint announcement. I understand why you'd want to include some cards like this, but I don't understand why they're not going a little bit harder with a couple of bigger level reprints. And so my thought process is that they're going to go ahead and try to sell this using the shocks, but I think as a person, as a player who's going to be spending your money and investing in this, I just don't see the value really being there from, buying boxes and cracking them open. And obviously singles are usually going to be the way to go, but if we're looking at it on a grander scale of LGS is selling them and people going in on product, it's just what is your estimated value pulled back, especially on draft boxes? Collector boxes you might have a bit more of an argument for because there are specific stuff in there, as I mentioned earlier, the serialized cards, and then also the borderless shocklands are only going to be in collector boosters. Those do have some incredible artwork, so there is that to look forward to in terms of, the top end of the set. But everything else just kind of falls into the middle, and this is a premium product, quote unquote, so it's going to cost $6 or $7 a pack, I think will be the standard rate, versus your normal pack price, and that to me isn't necessarily justified here, given some of the things. Another good reprint, there's at least a couple of them here. Guardian Project is one that comes to mind from Ravnica Allegiance. You can, draw power when playing, non-token creatures that have different names, so obviously a lot of use in Commander specifically, and this does have, its own alternate art print as well. And then we've got Cyclonic Rift, another card that was just in Commander Masters back in August. They actually upshifted it to Mythic, so it's going to be even harder to pull. I guess maybe that will help preserve some of the value. But the biggest reprint in this set is a card that was $30, and I think the only reason that card really was $30 before was because of scarcity. And so there are some good cards in here, especially the War of the Spark Planeswalkers and stuff. I'm not saying the set itself is bad as a whole, but I am just a little bit worried about its overall long-term value and the choices that kind of go into it, because I think it's probably going to be collector booster or bust. And even in the collector boosters, it's going to be, borderless anime, borderless shocks, or serialized, or bust. And I just don't know that that's a great way to sell a product as a premium product You know, when you consider a set like Lost Caverns of Ixalan that was a standard price product, but it actually had a lot of really good hits and was considered by the community to be a pretty good set, versus Ravnica, which I'm a little bit less, you know, optimistic on, at least as it comes to draft boosters. I think with this set, if you are going to buy sealed products, collector boosters are going to be the way to go, but obviously there's going to be some, you know, distinction there in price and whether or not you can get them at a good deal where it's worth it. So a lot of things to see shake out there, in my opinion, with this, but this was just sort of my, like, you know, unfiltered thoughts. Let me know what you guys think, because it's possible that I'm, you know, on the minority side of this, being like, all right, yeah, it's not that great of a set, or at least the draft boosters feel like they're not going to be worth the while. But let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.